Okay, so hey, hi guys, hello and welcome back to my channel Elucidate. And on to this particular lecture, we are going to do the demo part. As I already explained you guys into my second lecture, that is onto my previous topic, that what all these local variables are. I compared them local variables with global variables, and I also told you what static variables are with the help of these particular diagram. Like this is the place Mumbai, a lot of local areas are present over there and a lot of localites are living onto this particular area, and this is the reason why their scope was limited, and number of things I already explained. Okay, these were the global users I already explained you with the help of some example, and these were my static users. Okay, so onto this particular lecture, I'll quickly cover without wasting time. I'll show you why or how they do not have any default values. For this, in order to make this lecture a little bit easier, I am not taking the example of writing a program onto a notepad file and then running it and compiling it, making it look even more difficult and tougher. I have already installed an Eclipse editor over here, and whatever these things are, do not worry at this point of time. I'll explain later on, but first try to understand the concept what we have written over here. Okay, so I have written that we have written over here that they do not have any default values. So by mean of default values, I already explained you guys earlier that uh, I have taken the example of Mohit, who was jobless and he was not having any work. So he will be jobless until unless you provide him some work. Like in elections, he was given some money to to bring n number of people, so as to give vote to this particular candidate. Okay, so whatever work you do him, you give him, he'll get initialized by that particular work only. If you do not initialize him with any work, or do not support or do not provide him any work, he will not have any default values, unlike the global variables. Okay, so coming back again over here, do they have default values? No. How? I'm gonna show it to you. Okay, so I'll compare each and everything in detail. I'll try to compare it. Okay, so first I'll create a method over here, like public void, let's say Mumbai localites. This is a method that I've created over here, right? Since these people were residing inside Mumbai itself, so they would be where find onto this particular area itself. Since they are localites, so their scope will also be limited to that as well. So if I define a particular value, like let's say I'm taking a string local person 1. If I just declare them, it will simply show that variable, the value of variable local person is not used. Okay, and if you just try to print it over here, and if I do that local person 1, it will start giving me some sort of error. The value may not have been initialized. Why it is saying that? Why? Because I have not yet assigned him any work. I have not given any work to Mohit at this point of time. So let's take example of Mohit itself, right? So now I am first assigning him some sort of work, like string local person, let's say string Mohit equals help in voting, because he need to provide some help in voting as well, right? So now I have given him some work. Okay, and now if I try to print his work over here, then I would not be getting any sort of error. Okay, so this was the meaning of this particular line. When we say that do they have any default values? No, by default they were not having any values. We assigned them some work. We assigned this variable a certain string value. If we again if I remove it, I'll do just control X over here, it will start giving out error again, because it says that local variable Mohit may not have been initialized, no work has been given to Mohit, or Mohit does not have any default value at this point of time. So even you can't even print the default value over here right now. Okay, because he does not have any. So If we initialize it over here, he will surely have some value. So this was in the case of string, right? Let's say if I take an example of integer, like integer a1 equals nothing. If I just define it over here, again it is giving me some warning kind of thing, that again the value is not being used. He does not have any value, so what can even we use, right? So if we try to use this particular value over here again onto this particular method, let's say if I try to print the value of a1, what is the value of a1? Nothing. He has nothing. I have not given him any rupees. So let's say money, right? Money given to Mohit. Let's say this is a very big name. Normally people do not take like this, just for the sake of understanding. If I give him 100 rupees, okay, and now if I try to print or try to produce the output of what was the money given to Mohit, it will simply print 100 over here, right? So let's say if in order to print it, I'll just create an object. Do not worry at this point of time what object is all about. There is a particular way of creating an object, like this l1 equals to new particular this. And most people think that this is the l1 is the object created. No, it is not the object gets created over here. The new is the object kind of stuff. I'll explain later on, but just try to understand only the difference what I'm uh, gonna show you over here. Okay, so if I now print it l1 dot, if I call this function in Java, we say that we are calling this function onto the main method, right? Because all the execution starts from over here itself. An object got created, and with the help of that object we are just trying to call it, or with the help of object reference. I'll explain later. If I run this program, see, it is printing like help in voting string Mohit. We initialized him. What he will be do, he will be helping in voting, right? And what is the money given to Mohit, like this, okay? But if we remove it over here, everything will start getting errored out. Even if I run it deliberately, it will say that unresolved compilation problem, local variable money given to Mohit may not have been initialized. You have said that some money has been given to Mohit, but what was the amount? Since he's a local person, please do not get confused. Mohit is a local, so local variables do not have any default values as per the Java definition. We need to initialize them every time. This is why they were not having any values, okay? So we need to initialize them if you want to make use of them. If you want to make use of Mohit, you need to provide him some money as well, so that he can at least take the expenses of petrol charges of going and number of people, meeting and number of people. So it might help him, right? So if you want to make use of these local variables inside a method, this is a method, I'm taking example of method only over here. You need to initialize it, otherwise you won't be able to make use of them. Just like in normal life, if you want Mohit to help you out in your voting, give him some money, 5 lakh, 10 lakh, 15 lakh, 20 lakh, so that he can call people at his own will. So in order to make use of these local people residing inside local area, like this local method, or sorry, not local method, inside a method, you need to initialize them first. So till now we have completed one thing, that they do not have any default value, okay? And where we declare them inside method, constructor, or blocks. So I have declared the local variables inside this particular method only, okay? I have not declared it outside. If I declare it outside, then they will become global just by the definition, right? As I have written outside method, constructor, or block, then they are the global variables. But inside this, if I declare them inside Elphinstone Road, they will be local. Outside, let's say outside Mumbai or outside Noida, Delhi, they will become global, as I already explained you very very in deep in my previous lecture, okay? So if I just run it, perfect, it is working fine, right? Let's say create another function. I also told you a concept that a local variable cannot be used. Let's say if there is a voting, then Mohit can only help in voting or cast his vote in Mumbai itself. At the same time, he cannot go and help in Noida itself, right? So his scope is limited to Mumbai Elphinstone Road only. And how, I'll show you. Since this was a Mohit, his power, his authority, or you can say the things under his control are only in Mumbai itself. If I call him in Noida, he won't be able to work even in the programming language. I'll show you. Public void Delhi localites. I'm Because there was a Delhi election, so I'm just taking examples of Delhi localites, right? So now over here I'll again define my one person. Let's say string Rahul. If I just do it over here, see again it will say that value is not initialized because he is a local variable. I'm defining it. So give him some value. What he will do? He will help in voting for, let's say, Delhi, and he was allowed to help in voting for Mumbai, right? And now if I want to make use it, since I have given him some value, so I can use this value, I can print it. Okay, so right, so there is no error at this point of time till now. And now the thing which what I was going to do or show you about the the scope and the power of this particular person. His power is restrained in Mumbai only. If you call Mohit, or let's say if I try to call this local variable to help in Delhi election, or onto this particular method, see, something will not work. Okay, let's say if I try to print or make use of Mohit over here, if I try to print it, see, Mohit cannot be resolved to a variable. Mohit does not even exist in a Delhi. So how can he come and help in Delhi? I mean, I'm just taking example again and again because I've already discussed this example. I do have a number of examples, that two technical ones as well. But since my lecture started with this example, so I'm bound to take this example, guys. Okay, so please do not get confused at any point of time. If you want a Mohit kind of person over here to help you out, you need to create another variable, string Mohit equal to, let's say, help in Delhi, and now print it, right? So this is another person, this is not the same person. The same two people can have same name. This was the Mohit of uh, of Mumbai, but this is Mohit of Delhi. So this is why there is no error coming, because he can help in you know in Delhi elections. He is a local of resident. I have created it as a local person living in Delhi. This is a Delhi method. So I created a string Mohit and gave him some name or assigned him some task. I initialized it. Okay, but if you do not do all these things, and if you see that like it should be able to call Mohit over here as well, because Mohit was having this particular value. If you try to print it out, it will not work because Mohit is not initialized, and it is thinking that we are talking about Delhi, but actually what we were thinking, we are trying to call this thing, this variable that got defined on this particular method. We are trying to call this, but it will not work over here because this is local. He can only help, his scope is defined inside method, constructor, or block. Onto this method his scope it will not work. Okay, so if you want to again make use of deliberately the same thing, then you need to define a different person over here. So this was all about this particular thing what I have been trying to say till yesterday. Okay, so do they have default values? No, they have to be initialized. Where can we declare them? We can declare them inside method, constructor, or blocks. And what was the scope of local variable? The scope was limited to their methods only, right? I showed you. If I try to print it, this even if I this try to print this particular money given to Mohit over here, let's say SYSO. See, this will also not work. This string will not work. Anything which is local to this method will not work over here. The money that was given to Mohit in Mumbai will work in Mumbai itself. Just try to understand in that particular fashion. The money that you given was to Mohit in Mumbai. He was not given money in Delhi, right? So it is not working. Simple fact. Okay. So I've covered these three things. The fourth point I'll cover later on. There we do have a lot of time to discuss access specifier. Okay. Now coming back to instance or global variables. What are the global variables? Global variables were declared outside the method, constructor, or block. So outside this method, I am going to define them, the global variables. Whosoever is defined over here becomes a global variable. That is it. And they do have some default value. They are not like Mohit sitting jobless and waiting for someone to give some work, just like we do have a normal laborers in our country, who just work and earn for a day, and the next day they do not have any default value, right? So you can visualize these local variables, that kind of stuff. And now coming back to the global variables, what is the global variable? They do have some value, and they are declared outside method, constructor, or block. As per definition, they are declared outside. So first we will declare them, and then we will check their default values. Declare your global variable. Let's say string. Uh, let's say, who is a global kind of person? Let's say Iron Man is a global, right? Like string Iron Man. And I'm not assigning him any name. Okay. Since Iron Man movie you guys have seen n number of times, he's a global kind of user. Just imagine, he can go to Vormir, he can go to Nidavellir, he can go to place where Thanos was residing, he can go to Earth, he can go to any other place, right? So he's a global kind of user. Just try to understand. So I've taken a string Iron Man, and I'm taking an integer as well. Let's say integer a1, and I'm not giving, let's say, income of Iron Man. This is an integer, income of Iron Man. Okay. And there was a one boolean concept as well, boolean b. Okay, so these were the three things that have been discussed over here: integer, boolean, and I'll show you how. And they are discussed, sorry, they have been declared outside the method. Okay. So since these are the global things that are is specified outside this method, these variables which are declared outside method, constructor, or block, they become your global variables. And global variables have scope on all these particular areas. First thing, I'll show you the default values. If I want to print the default values, go to your main method, and if you know do it l1 dot ironman, right? And l1 dot b. Okay, and I'm just printing the default values over here. L1 dot income of Iron Man, right? If I just print it, see, the default value of a string of a global variable, sorry, for a global variable of type string, the default value is null. Okay. For integer, it's 0, and for boolean, it's false. As I have already told you over here. For integer it's 0, boolean it's false, and a string is null. Okay. So for a string, Iron Man is the string. It is showing me null. Then I printed the boolean b, because the order I have specified it like this. Okay. In order to remove the confusion, I'll do it like this, and now I'll run it again. So string has value null, integer has value by default 0, and boolean has by default value false. Okay, so this was all written over here. So yes, they do have default values. Iron Man, uh, you know um, has some default value. He has some a lot of income, right? And by default value of boolean variable is false. Okay, so let's assume that he first say no, and then he agrees, that kind of stuff, any other thing. So guys, we have discussed these 2 points, and now what is the scope of global variables? I have written all method within a class. So this is my class, local, global, static. I've given it. So whatever the methods are there, their scope is global inside all methods within a class. Okay, it means that Iron Man can be used in Mumbai, and Iron can go to Delhi as well in voting. He can help in Mumbai elections. He can also help in like Delhi as well, right? So let's uh, give some values of Iron Man so that it becomes easier for you to understand. Let's say string Iron Man is Johnny Depp, any name, Robert Downey Jr. His name is Robert, right? What is the income of Iron Man? It's since it is integer, so it has to be an integer. Okay, so let's say $900 kind of stuff, right? And just forget about Boolean at this point of time. Okay, so now if I want to use Iron Man over here, I just need to specify the variable and it will print its value, right? And this is the way how I print it, making use of Robert kind of stuff. It will print out, right? So I have been able to make use in making use in, let's say, Mumbai. So in Mumbai, I am using this variable, global variable, and onto this second method also I would be able to use this this variable Iron Man. Okay, why? Because he's a global user, and as a global variable, the scope is inside all method, constructor, or blocks. Okay, so now if I just try to print them out, L1 dot Mumbai localites and L1 dot Delhi localites. See what it has started printing. I'll remove these values. Okay, so L1 dot Mumbai localite. If I go to this method, I am just printing. I'm printing this particular value of Iron Man. Like, so, Robert is being used in Mumbai as well. This was the scope of your instance variable, which I normally call it, people call it global variable. So inside all methods it can be accessed. Okay, so I accessed it into the first method, and I was able to access it onto my second method as well. So see over here I've written let's say Delhi. Okay, so making use in Delhi, this is a global variable. The value of this global variable was Robert, that was assigned. I can use this value in all the functions that have been defined within a class. Okay, so since it was a global variable, he can help in Mumbai, he can help in Delhi as well. I can also make use of his income. I can make use of his income. It's just that I'll just with money, and let's say income of Iron Man. That is it. I can make use of his income over here as well, since all the global variables have access to all the methods. It's not like only this string will be having anything you define it over here, boolean, a char, and byte short. I mean that kind of stuff we'll discuss later on. They would be having access. Their scope is global, so you can make use of them in any of the method, constructor, or blocks. Okay, if I just print it out, see, first of all, I am making use. I'm just segregating it so that it becomes easier for you to read. Okay, so I am making use of Iron Man in Mumbai, and I'm making use of his money as well. Okay, I'm making use of Iron Man in Delhi, and I am making use of his money as well. Okay, see, this is the global variable. I am using it onto my first function or method that I have described. I am making use of both these global variables over here as well. Okay, so that was all that we needed to discuss. Access specifier can be used, and what is the way to make or call them? I was calling them inside a normal method kind of thing, so I was just calling them directly, right? See, I've just called this thing directly, like Iron Man and income of Iron Man. Okay, and if we are calling within a static method, so I'm not discussing static method. We still do have a lot of time, a lot of lectures. We can discuss static and non-static later on, but we will discuss it later on. So now back to step 3. Now we are going to understand the static variables. What the static variables were? These were like the professor kind of variables, like Professor Chintamani, or scientist like Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam kind of stuff. So whenever we take name of APJ Abdul Kalam, we do not call him, we give him respect, we call him like doctor. These were the static users. I gave example yesterday itself. Okay, so everything would be the same. It's just that a static keyword would be required, and that is it. Everything is gonna be nearly the same. I'll demo you how. Make it static and make it static. Right? See, I made them static. Now I'm calling them by some sort of extra respect kind of stuff. So over there we were calling them like Professor Chintamani. Here you are calling static integer, static string, static boolean, that kind of stuff. Okay, I hope I am making sense at this point of time. So if I run it, it will still run properly. See, these were the static variables. Now they are not global. A static keyword has been written, so they are like professors and scientists kind of thing. But still, their access, we have declared them outside method constructor or blocks, outside method constructor or blocks, but with a static keyword. Yes, with this help of static keyword, their scope is inside all methods. They are still working fine as they were working with the global variables, although static is appended there, but still their access was the same. Their scope is also the same, just like them. They all, or they always have, a default values. If you just go ahead and print the default values, it will again print it out. Again, I need to remove these values, and if you print them, it will give the default value, just like it did it in the case of this particular stuff. That is the global variables. Okay, and what is the way of calling them? If we are calling them within a method, they can be called directly. So Iron Man, we are making, if we're calling them within this particular method, I just call them directly. Okay, I can also call them by using class name. So what is my class name? Class name dot Iron Man. So I can call them. This is the way of calling them. That is it. By using class name or by using object reference. So object reference, I'll have not told you guys, so that this is the reason why I'm not telling you, but this is the object reference. I have called entire method over here. I have called entire Mumbai localites with the help of object reference. I created this object like a driver. I told you, if you want to call some celebrities to your house, you need to create a driver. So let's say this is that driver, or the chauffeur kind of person, right, who has gone to airport to bring some people. So with the help of this object reference, I have called some of the methods. I have not discussed in detail, so that's why I'm not going into the deep as well at this point of time. Okay, but by using class name, I've showed you I have value, and they can be called directly as well. So you can call these things like with the help of their class name, or they can call directly as well. Okay, allow me to remove it back. So guys, this was all I think that we needed to discuss onto this particular thing. Okay guys, so I'm back. There was some issue. So guys, this was the all that we have decided. We decided early to give theoretical base to everyone. And after, and onto this particular lecture, I have given you demo how, like, for local variables, what can be the default value, how can we declare them, what can be the scope, and can access specifiers be used or not. I'll discuss it later on for all each of these things, because we do have a lot of things to cover. But I hope I have made sense and you are able to understand a little bit in terms of programming concept. Okay, so guys, thank you, thanks a lot for your time, and thanks a lot for your patience. And please stay tuned for my upcoming lectures as well, and I'll let you know, guys. Right? So guys, thanks a lot.